Gather round, ye lads and lasses, set ye for a while, and hearken to me mournful tale about the Emerald Isle. Let's all raise our glasses high to friends and family gone, and lift our voices in another Irish drinking song. Consumption took me mother and me father got the pox. Me brother drank the whiskey till he wound up in a box. Me other brother in the troubles met with his demise. Me sister has forever closed her smiling Irish eyes.
Now everybody's died, so until our tears are dried, we'll drink and drink and drink and drink, and then we'll drink some more. We'll dance and sing and fight until the early morning light, then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again.
Kenny was killed in Kilkenny, and Clare she died in Clare. Tip and Tipperary died out in the dead year. Shannon jumped into the river, Shannon back in June. Ernie fell into the urn, and Tom is in the tomb. Cleanliness is godliness, me Uncle Pat would sing. He broke his neck a-slipping on a bar of Irish Spring. O'Grady, he was 80, though his bride was just a pup. He died upon the honeymoon when she got his Irish up.
Now everybody's died, so until our tears are dried, we'll drink and drink and drink and drink, and then we'll drink some more. We'll dance and sing and fight until the early morning light, then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da, 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 ba-da-ba-da-ba-da.
Joe Murphy fought with Riley near the cliffs of Old Denis. He took out his shillelagh and he stabbed him in the spleen. My crazy Uncle Mike thought he was a leprechaun, but in fact he's just a leopard, and his arms and legs are gone. When Timmy Johnson broke his neck, it was a crying shame. He wasn't really Irish, but he went to Notre Dame. McNamara crossed the street and by a bus was hit, but he was just a Scotsman, so nobody gave a shit.
Now everybody's died, so until our tears are dried, we'll drink and drink and drink and drink, and then we'll drink some more. We'll dance and sing and fight until the early morning light, then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again.
Me drunken Uncle Brendan tried to drive home from the bar. The road rose up to meet him when he fell out of his car. Irony was what befell me great-grand-uncle Sam. He choked upon the very last potato in the land. Connor lived in Ulster town, he used to smuggle arms, until the British killed him and cut off his lucky charms. And dear old Father Flanagan, who left the Lord's employ, drunk on sacramental wine beneath the altar boy.
Now everybody's died, so until our tears are dried, we'll drink and drink and drink and drink, and then we'll drink some more. We'll dance and sing and fight until the early morning light, then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again.
Someday soon I'll leave this world of pain and toil and sin. The Lord will take me by the hand to join all of me kin. Me only wish is when the Saviour comes for me and you.
He kills the cast of Riverdance and Michael Flatley too. Now everybody's died, so until our tears are dried, we'll drink and drink and drink and drink, and then we'll drink some more. We'll dance and sing and fight until the early morning light, then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again. Then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again. Then we'll throw up, pass out, wake up, and then go drinking once again.
Hey everybody, welcome to Lesser Saints of Discord. Sorry we're running late. Seems like everybody's having technical difficulties today. There may or may not be a YouTube Saints live stream tonight, but we're going to do this show anyways, because why not?
And if there isn't a YouTube Saints live stream tonight, you know, we could just do it as a double feature and make this much longer than we usually do, and then turn around and be like, hey, Jeff, Nick, you want to come on the show and be our guests and just kind of do it? I mean, we'll figure something out.
Yeah,
you will be entertained.
Well, fuck around. Yeah. Plus, that means we might not even have any time constraints. I don't know. Jeff never messages me back.
Yeah, actually, did you check if Sofane and Fat Pat are streaming tonight? Because if they are, I mean...
Oh, those fucking assholes better not be fucking streaming tonight.
I'm just saying, the Twitter bans could get even more real from you.
Okay.
Speaking of which, as far as I know, I'm still not banned by Steve Shives, and I don't know how this is true.
How the fuck are you not banned by Steve Shives?
Oh, wait, no, sorry, blocked. Steve Shives can't ban me.
Yeah, but okay, still, how are you not blocked by Steve Shives? You should just tweet at him and say, hey.
I did. I don't know. You know what? I should actually... I will check that live right now. You guys get to find out before anyone else. Let's actually... you don't get to see it. You don't get to see it. But we're going to go to my Twitter. And we're going to look at Steve Shives. I think I said, hi, how are you? Something like that to him. And I am still not blocked by him.
Sweet. All right.
I almost want to keep it that way.
Oh, yeah, we could also do if we can't get a hold of these Saints, we could always do a crossover between the pre-show and the post-show. We can do that, too.
For a second there, I thought you were going to say if we can't get a hold of the Saints, we could always get Steve Shives on. I'm just thinking, no.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. That would be fucking hilarious.
But then he'd definitely block me.
Yeah.
That would hurt me so much. I don't know if I can handle that kind of rejection, Jables.
I was blocked within 5 minutes of joining Twitter. Well, I don't know how you're not blocked.
I don't know how I'm not either, but see, here's the thing, Jables. You may have experience with rejection like that through a long life of, I don't really know. You have stories that I haven't heard. But I'm fragile. I'm so young and innocent, and I don't think I can just... I just couldn't handle it. If he said no like that, like... it would break my heart.
You're only 3 years younger than me.
Oh, God, how dare you dox me like that?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Because age is a huge thing.
Well, I mean, some people say it's just a number.
That's what I'm going to say, as long as you're younger than me.
Oh, no, we're going down a very strange route here.
Anyways... Welcome to the Lesser Saints Discord, your one and only pre-show for the YouTube Saints that might not actually be a pre-show, might be a standalone show this week. God damn, coming at you every week with a smaller core audience and a smaller target audience than a small village. Alright, let's just do the news. We only got one.
We've got one thing in the news. Speaking of Steve Shives, let me just go ahead and boom, and then... Where are you hiding, you bastard? Oh, yeah. Working OBS does not work like cleaning a car. But yeah, speaking of Steve Shives, apparently cancer injections are a thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
shit. I forgot to pull up the article.
Oh, that's
unfortunate. Good. Yeah.
So this is from Fox 2 Detroit. I don't know all what that means. I don't pay attention to things. Except it says it's by Fox26Houston.com staff. I'm very confused. Either way, headline is, cancer injection eliminates tumors in mice. I don't think you have to imagine my shock. I'm actually kind of confused here. So scientists
are they just...
Wait, oh, go ahead, please.
Are they making cancer fight cancer? Is that what's going on?
I mean, maybe.
Sort of a fight with fire mentality going?
I mean, that's kind of... Like, maybe they watched a Godzilla movie and were like, you know, there's something here. Yeah, so scientists have taken a giant step towards curing cancer, according to a new study. I will explain why I have problems with that in a moment. Stanford University researchers have found a way to clear cancer in mice with immune system stimulating injections. The report published in the Science Translational Medicine Journal last week shows promise in terms of destroying tumors. New approach is a form of immunotherapy which uses the body's own disease-fighting power to battle cancer. So how is it a cancer injection? They're not injecting cancer in to kill the... Oh, I'm so disappointed now.
Wait, is it injection? It just involves cancer?
No, it's just a cancer treatment. It's not a cancer injection. It's a cancer treatment injection.
Okay, now I'm disappointed. Maybe we should read the articles beforehand.
We really do. This was so promising. Cancer like injecting cancer into mice somehow gets rid of tumors. It'd be really funny if it got rid of benign tumors, where it's like, oh hey, we put in cancer and killed your benign tumor, but you have cancer now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fuck.
Well, that's
you know,
lovely.
I think the only article I read beforehand was about the guy that jerked off with the anglerfish. Still looking for him. Help me out, guys.
Yeah, we're still looking to find that guy. What I will say about this, just to give us a little bit of time, because we're not totally talking about anything controversial, and you know that could have either of us going on for hours tonight. Definitely not anything like that. We'll get to that in a moment. But
this article's kind of related.
Yeah, it's kind of related. So first off, this is a good idea, using the immune system to help destroy cancer cells, because your immune system already does that. The reason why you don't get cancer all the damn time, considering that cancers are pretty much all like a mutation that causes a cell to keep just kind of, replicating without stopping. It just keeps growing, and then you get all these horrible, horrible errors. Is that your immune system does seek out and destroy those if it can. It's just sometimes it doesn't catch it in time. So yeah, doing this, good step. Help the body do what it does. Interesting idea.
It's almost like a cancer vaccine.
No. No, it's because like a vaccine is like, it's like showing somebody a wanted poster to be like, all right, if this guy comes in here, shoot him, Whereas this is more like going and giving everybody guns and saying if anybody tries to break in, shoot him.
Oh, okay.
Hey, back to guns again.
I can see this. Drugs and guns, that's all we know.
But yeah, in general, I really hate this thing of curing cancer, because that's, oh god, it's kind of a dumb statement. It's a little bit like, I'd say it's almost like solving hunger, where it's like it's just a more complicated issue than just feeding everybody, but it's more than that, because cancer is not one thing. It's a whole huge family of a bunch of different diseases that are all really different. It depends on which cell it is, it depends on how the cell glitched out, where it is in the body, what it's messing with. So like leukemia and like leukemia and melanoma are both cancers, but they behave in very, very different ways and have to be treated differently and diagnosed differently and all kinds of stuff. So it's like, it's kind of like saying like, I cured cold. It's like, good job. Which one?
Yeah. Well, now we got a nice little soundbite from you. I hate this thing of curing cancer.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. But
nice
this title reminds me of that Two Best Friends Play moment with I think it's Saints Row 4, where they're sitting there trying to decide between two bills that their vice president Keith David is holding towards them. If you haven't played Saints Row 4, it's worth it. But one of them is let them eat cake, and the other one is fuck cancer. Direct quotes. And they're trying to decide which of these to pass, because they can only pass one. Cuts to 2 hours later in the argument with one of them yelling, "No, Pat, you cannot solve world hunger by feeding people cancer." So that's what this makes me think of.
Okay.
No,
we
Pat.
harvest people's tumors and we send them to third world countries.
No, Jables, you cannot get rid of everybody's tumors by injecting them with cancer. Alright. Let's just go ahead and minimize that for now. Oh boy.
Christ. Yeah.
Oh, this is format. We're good at that.
I don't know science Y2KNW. I learned from experiences, which is what we're.
Is the live chat saying things?
Yeah, they're saying why not.
Kentucky Fried Cancer can't be worse than the normal version. That's a good one. Oh my god.
All right.
To be fair, so Mino and others are saying things like, that sounds really bad out of context. True. It is nowhere even close to the worst thing I've said in context or out of context. I've got some really bad sound bites that, like, when they get passed around, it's just like, oh god, I really wish people had forgotten I said that. But you don't get to hear me repeat them.
I'll repeat them. I'll point people to it too.
Oh, dude, you don't even know some of them. Lymph node looking good, yeah. That'd be Kentucky Fried Leukemia, wouldn't it?
I don't fucking know. I don't know cancer.
Like Kentucky Fried Lymphoma.
I told you, I learned through experience. I haven't gotten cancer, so I don't know much about it.
I certainly hope you never become overburdened with curiosity on that regard, guy.
Well, I do smoke, so maybe I'm trying to figure it out.
But that's only one kind of cancer. Like, you could get lung cancer and then be like, well, I still don't know anything about all the others. Gotta go, like, bathe in Chernobyl or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Go to Chernobyl, eat some of the animals running around, take a bath in one of the hot springs there, whatever.
They even have hot springs?
I don't know. I'm just throwing shit out there. Maybe they do.
That'd be kind of funny, actually.
Chernobyl Hot Springs, your next your cancer destination. See if you can glow in the dark afterwards.
Oh man.
You'll never get lost. You'll never lose your friends in the woods again at night.
So according to Y2K and W, cancer is like Pokemon. Gotta catch them all.
Yeah, that's how I treat STDs. But
I thought that was more like a punch card system, and once you had all of them, you like got to go like turn it in, and you get like I don't know something like a discount on your car insurance or some bullshit.
Well, you might be able to make it into the Guinness Book of World Records. I think that'd be nice.
Maybe you'd have to, you'd have to do a little bit better than Emperor Tiberius, or as I like to call him, Porn King. But that's a story for another time. Roman history's fun.
Jeez. All right.
A man who apparently was so riddled with disease that when he, what's the word? Bathed in a bath, and this is a big Roman bath. No one else would step in it because they believed it to be horribly contaminated, and they were probably right.
Nothing like a disease to do.
Story goes that he, after being emperor for a while, just kind of went to an island and commissioned all kinds of porn and statues and everything, and he had this museum of porn, and no one ever visited it.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true, but I like to believe that it is.
There's some interesting people in history, like Tycho Brahe.
Oh, man. Tycho's, God, he is a trip. Lost his nose, had it replaced with a golden one.
had a midget that lived underneath his kitchen table, so that when he had that lived underneath his dining room table, and claimed to be a fortune teller, so he would just smack the table, little midget would run out and start telling people's future and get real dark because he also had schizophrenia. That's an interesting one.
So speaking of crazy stuff, we're talking about drugs this week.
Yeah. Funny enough, drugs is how I found out about Tycho Brahe. So.
He's, interesting guy, worth looking up. Pretty important astronomer, actually.
All right. So,
cool stuff.
you want to give Bar a call, and I'll do a little disclaimer.
Yeah, do the disclaimer, and we'll make this happen.
Yeah. Okay, so by no means am I suggesting that people do drugs.
And then Jables immediately cuts out, so by no means is he suggesting people do drugs, but now it's his turn. Yeah,
and so it's good for me to explain my experiences. Waffle's going to do a bit more of the side of shit. I've done a various number of drugs, and it should be fun. And Bar, as far as I know, knows nothing about drugs.
Pretty much. My experience with drugs is zero.
So I think I think I'm probably speaking for both of us when I say anytime you've got a question, just go ahead and interrupt and pop it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice stupidity will ensue.
Yeah. So where should we start? I don't know where to start with this. So
well, I've got a thing that could sort of break the ice a little bit that may or may not get us in trouble.
Oh, also, hi, Mom. You're probably watching right now.
All right, everybody, you now have a My Circle link. Go ahead and hop in because it's important.
That's how important.
All right, you good? Everybody in? Rich Corinthian leather. Yes, indeed. I do the voice. I don't know which voice, but I do a voice, but I don't feel like it right now. Are you guys both in? I can't tell.
Not quite yet.
Soon I will see 3. Soon I will see 3.
Still loading.
There we go. Okay, so time for me to open that up, and here you go.
Oh, not to worry. I've got some cocaine right here. Ah, okay. You think cocaine is a problem. Well, I've done it for 32 years. See, I am part of a group of responsible cocaine users. We adhere to strict rules to ensure things don't get out of control. It's not used to feel good, not for base pleasure, certainly. It's a medicine to improve our lives, like penicillin or opium.
Yes.
I feel like that's a good icebreaker. Just
yeah, that is a good icebreaker because that is sort of how I treat drugs. I enjoy doing them from time to time. I don't do them all the time. Other than drinking, I drink a lot, but other than that.
I too come from a long line of responsible opium users. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, I've dabbled with opium, and Mom, I told you not to watch, but if you're watching, then
were you in a den?
You're getting the nit and grit. So the first time I smoked weed was I was 13. It was spring break, and I just decided to say fuck it and started drinking at the same time. Later on through high school, I've tried opium, acid, mushrooms, all sorts of things like that, and I also made honor roll my senior year. So anybody that tells you that drugs just make you stupid, not necessarily true. Irresponsible drug use, that is what can definitely make you stupid. One thing that I advise everybody to do if you do want to dabble in drugs is be responsible and make sure you have life taken care of first before you start dabbling into these weird areas of subculture. And yeah, my thoughts on kratom. It's really helpful for opiate users, from what I've seen.
On which?
First, Shit Covered Truth was just asking my thoughts on kratom.
Oh. I can see that.
From what I've seen, it's nearly harmless. If you take too much of it, you just end up throwing it up, and you can't really overdose on it, as far as I know. And it's actually really helpful because it gives you kind of the same feeling as an opiate high. It hits all the same receptors in the brain, so it can help you get off of opiates. Yep. Bar, do you have any questions about any drugs?
One, which is the thing about, I think everyone's mind is the addiction.
Addiction of what?
How much of it has to do with individual users? And
everybody's brain is different. I guess you could say I'm addicted to alcohol because I do drink every day. But a lot of what it comes down to is everybody's different. And especially if you're doing things more than one day in a row, you can definitely develop some sort of dependency on it. Where it comes to like nicotine gives your body like a physical addiction, like your body needs that. Opiates can do the same.
So as far
something
as
like cocaine, for example.
cocaine absolutely can. Part of what's happening with not every addiction, but most of them. And if anyone is around is a substance abuse like specialist, by all means, correct me. But I think I've got the right of this. Part of what's going on, like let's take something like various opiates, so morphine, heroin, oxycodone, OxyContin, hydrocodone, pain pills, basically. Opiates will basically kind of plug into some receptors in your brain, among other places at times, that are the same ones that your body uses to, for endorphins. So like you go work out a whole bunch, your body releases endorphins to kind of make you feel good. You get injured, your body releases endorphins to kind of help you function. There's a lot of stuff that your endorphins are for. So what opiates do is they artificially trigger that. Here's the problem. When you artificially trigger that, you're going to flood you're effectively flooding your brain with all these sorts of chemical responses that are coming from that. You're artificially sending a whole bunch of signals, and that can overstress that mechanism. So it gets worse and worse and worse doing it by itself. So and you build up a tolerance too, because it starts taking more and more of the drug to do it. But let's say that you have, sort of a baseline that you're supposed to be you have a baseline kind of level of endorphins that are supposed to be in your system at any given time. If you keep spiking that or not the endorphins, but really kind of the stuff afterwards, if you keep spiking that by using something like heroin or really any of the pain pills, your body's going to do less and less of that by itself, to the point where it drops to this point where when you're not on the drug, you're in pain. Like it's horrible. You're sick. You're awful. You have this physical response. It's not all in your head. And then you're at this point where you're taking the drug not to feel good, but to feel normal.
So basically, you recondition the way your brain reacts to the stimuli, to a new normal,
Yeah, but a lot
or
of
the
that
new
comes-
normal. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Bar. You finish first.
No, I'm just trying to follow the train of thought. Basically, the more you indulge in those drugs, the more you reprogram how your body processes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Pleasure.
In a sense.
So it becomes like a new normal. And once
never
that's
dabbled.
out there.
I never dabbled with heroin specifically, but I definitely have had my fair share of other opiates and opium itself. I went on like a week-long kind of thing where I was smoking opium every day. Really fucking relaxing, I'll tell you that. If you want to just chill out for a couple weeks, then yeah, just smoke some opium.
A couple of things we should probably clear up fairly quickly, unless you have a thing you want to get out there, Jables.
The thing I want to get out there really is that everybody's different, so their propensity for addiction changes. So like I said before, I don't recommend anybody tries these drugs. I personally have not been addicted to opium or cocaine or anything like that. I've done all of them multiple times in a row, multiple days in a row and stuff, but it's always been something I've been able to drop. I'm more prone to alcoholism than anything else. But as far as some of the harder drugs, such as cocaine and opium and other opiates, I've never personally had an issue with it, so I can't really speak on the addictive qualities of that.
So, as far as wait, about heroin?
Well, opium. Heroin is just a highly refined opium. In that sense. In a sense. It's a very, 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 very basic way of putting it.
Heroin has an interesting backstory to it, and it boils down to people trying to create a less addictive form, or less addictive and more potent form of morphine, and it didn't work. They got it to be more potent, but more addictive.
Yeah.
By a lot.
But it all comes from the same plant. Opium is just...
The poppy seeds of the opium.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, well, that also goes back to cocaine. Cocaine comes from the coca plant. It's like the hash of the coca plant. Hash is to the pot plant as cocaine is to the coca plant.
Concentrated processed form.
Yep.
Yeah, it's worth noting that not all cane things are come from the coca plant. Or coca plant. So cocaine is called cocaine because it's a cane from the coca plant. So lidocaine, benzocaine, the novocaine, these are all chemically similar, and they work on the same thing, which is why they're topical anesthetics, or in the case of novocaine, they're injectable. They work the same way. Most
Tell you what, that's how
not.
How you can tell you have good cocaine, by the way. You just put a little bit on your gums. If your mouth goes completely numb, you're fucking set. You're ready to party, dude.
So the thing I wanted to go ahead and a few things I just kind of want to knock out as far as definitions go, because a lot of people are there's a lot of words that people will kind of misuse, but generally speaking, they sort of got the right of it. Addiction and dependency are some of those. Having a habit and having an addiction are not necessarily the same thing. So, for example, Jables says he drinks a lot, right? If he were to stop drinking tomorrow and have, like if he could just go, I'm not going to drink for a month, and just, bam, done, easy, tomorrow he feels fine, there's no difference. Probably not a dependency, probably not an addiction, it might just be a habit. Habits are definitely hard to kick. Usually when people are talking about addiction, they're talking about a physical dependency. There's a whole thing about psychological addiction. We'll get into that later. So, just those of you in the audience, remember that this is a thing. But at the same time, an addiction doesn't necessarily have to be a life-destroying thing. I'm sure someone will drink coffee.
My personal... Yeah, my personal definition for addiction is when it starts affecting your real life in a negative way.
I would suggest that we really not use that here. The reason being that...
But that's just me personally. I know I'm thoroughly addicted when I start spending all of my money on it, and I can't do anything but spend all my money on it. It starts affecting my personal life in really negative ways. You could use whatever disclaimer you want there, but that's just me personally.
Right. The reason why I want to be careful about that is because there is the colloquial thing of a video game addiction or a porn addiction and that kind of things, and those you might still need counseling for that. It's still potentially an addiction with a lot of similar treatments and all that, but that's one meaning. That's all falling under psychological addiction for the most part. But when we're talking you know, oh, how addictive is a drug? We're talking about the physical stuff about it, which is why you could say that something like marijuana is maybe habit forming for some people, but at the same time, it's not particularly addictive.
Yeah, I smoked heavy. God fucking damn it! Always right when we start fucking going, traffic picks up.
Yep.
Anyways,
You should close your window.
I'm smoking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is an
I'm
addiction.
wondering if you're doing the famous drugs.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can technically become addicted to chocolate. I used to sell a lot of weed. Yeah, I can talk about this. It's past the statute of limitations. I used to sell.
I'll have all of you know that if there were any doubt about anything in my past that could get me in trouble, you would not hear about it. And there's definitely nothing to hear about.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of stuff that, well, it can't get me in trouble anymore. I'm good.
And Cynic, so Cynic just mentioned knowing a kid that went to rehab for a WoW addiction, and part of that's because the treatments are oftentimes very much the same, because a lot of what you have to do beyond just detoxing and getting stuff out of your system is stay the hell away from whatever the problem is for long enough to form a new habit, you know, to get, you know, change the way you approach it. And a lot of that is going to rehab and staying in rehab.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm sorry, just to interrupt again, just to make sure I get it right. The habit is more a pattern of behavior you keep indulging in.
Right.
Whereas the addiction has to do with a physiological response to deprivation.
Kind of. No, I'd say
Okay,
that's
so
true.
the basics, yeah, ballpark, I'm getting it right.
For the most part, yeah. And that physiological response varies. Like, or not most people, but a lot of people are addicted to caffeine. Caffeine's really addictive.
Yeah, I've tried quitting twice. I couldn't.
Yeah, most people who are addicted to caffeine, when they stop drinking it, they don't necessarily start getting chills and the shivers and start, you know, like bleeding from places they shouldn't be or anything like that.
But they can definitely start getting a bunch of headaches.
Yeah, they start getting migraines. They start getting all kinds of other problems. But it's probably not
lack of
kill
energy.
you. Yeah,
lethargic. It's not a fun time. So I can't even imagine someone like withdrawing from opiates or something like that. How much worse it could be.
Opiate withdrawal can be really, really, really dangerous.
Have you ever seen the movie Trainspotting?
Yeah.
Not entirely accurate, but it
close
gets there. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of really nasty stuff that can happen to your body. You can have really dangerous blood pressure drops and stuff like that. It can be bad. But
same thing for heavy alcoholics too.
Yeah.
By the way, but you have to be like super heavy alcoholic. Quitting cold turkey can kill you if you
like the Amy Winehouse situation. Apparently, what killed her was suddenly stopping or something like that.
Yeah, you can have some strange stuff like that, and that's actually on the extreme end. That's a good example of what addiction can be like, because you're getting to this point where your body's conditioned to work with this more than it is to not work with it. Right? And so things start breaking, you know?
Yeah. Well, also, for example, I don't get hangovers really anymore. Yesterday was St. Paddy's Day. Happy St. Paddy's Day, everybody. Yep. And I did not hold back one little bit, but I felt fine today. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go with this. Today's also 1 year anniversary of the last time I took acid.
Hey, congrats.
That got fucking weird.
I don't know if that's congrats or not, but congrats, I guess.
No, I like to take it. There have been studies that show.
I'm sorry, just a quick interruption.
Yep.
So, LSD, does it have any dependency issues?
Actually, no. It's one of the really interesting ones in that respect.
And it does not form into your spine so that when you pop your back later, you get an acid flashback. That's not a true thing. Let's just say that myth is a myth. Get that out there real quick. That's my...
LSD metabolizes very quickly. It's not... I forget exactly what its biological half-life is, but it's a matter of hours. To give you an idea of sort of differences there, Prozac sticks around in your body for at least a month. That's one of the reasons why people don't really withdraw from Prozac when they stop taking it, and also why people might go off their meds and think, oh, I'm totally fine, everything's great, because you take Prozac, if you're taking Prozac, you take it every day to sort of keep it at a certain level, and it'll just kind of start curving down, but not that quickly, so it's like a month until you actually notice that you should have been on it, and that's after the point where people, you know, have kind of already discounted that as being the issue, so they think it's something else. It's, long story short, listen to your doctor, but... That's
another thing I want to throw out there. People, you can, if you are thinking about doing drugs, you can talk to your doctor, because there is doctor-patient confidentiality. As long as you're not eliciting extreme harm to yourself or others, you can talk to your doctor about drugs and their physiological effects.
Yeah. For example, one that I know a little bit about, I'm sure people have heard the term ayahuasca before, but it's a it's a couple of plants, one of which has a whole lot of DMT, and the other one has a certain MAO inhibitor in it. MAO is monoamine oxidase. It's chemical in your brain, does stuff, it's useful, and inhibiting it can make certain things do other stuff. Here's the thing.
A large amount of plants have DMT in them, but you need that MOA inhibitor in order for them to actually make you trip.
Not exactly. It's more complicated than that. Here's the thing about the MAO inhibitor. The reason I bring it up is that MAO inhibitors they interact with a lot of stuff. If you're taking Ritalin and an MAO inhibitor at the same time, that can kill you. So not like saying, oh, I'm planning to, let's say that everything's above board and legal. Let's say I'm going to travel down to South America, take part in a ceremony, and take ayahuasca, and the person, like your doctor, might tell you, no, don't do that, you'll die.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, especially if you're on various medications or you have any sort of persistent conditions, it is not a bad idea to talk to a doctor about this kind of thing.
The thing about doctors, for the most part, you might have an asshole doctor. I don't know. I go back to my hometown to see that doctor because I don't fucking trust doctors. The thing about doctors is that they tend to know a lot more about the effects that drugs have on the body, so it's really good to talk to your doctor because they also know your medical charts in your body. They know your blood pressure levels. They know whether or not something is going to extremely affect you negatively. Because like I said, everybody's different. So if you have multiple signs of different things that taking a certain drug might negatively impact you, they'll be the ones to know about it. That's why it's important to talk to your doctors.
Yep. And on that note, just quick thing, don't interrupt. If anyone listening to this now or after the fact has issues with substance abuse, knows people with issues with substance abuse, is thinking about trying drugs, is doing drugs but wants to know more about them, etc., curious, all that stuff, we're going to put several resources in the description. We're going to put helplines if you need it. We're going to put informational websites. We're not going to tell you where you can buy stuff. You have to figure that out yourself.
DM me, I might tell you.
but we're not saying it on air.
God damn it, Jables.
But in general, we're gonna do our best to put a lot of informational stuff down there, and everything above board and legal and all that. But still, not a bad idea to do your homework in any of these cases. And if you or anyone you know has a problem and needs help, by all means, get help. We'll put some resources down there down in the description for people to get help if they need it.
Oh, another fun thing to keep in mind: if you live near any colleges, chances are they might be doing studies on effects of certain drugs on people. For example, I got into this study on MDMA. That was a fun time, and so I was legally allowed to ingest MDMA. Because it was for scientific purposes, quite literally. Fun stuff. They were testing all sorts of different versions that were available around the world, and their potency and stuff like that, which they can do general tests and get down to the molecular level, but it's better for them to do sort of some human trials and see the effects on things like depression.
Yeah, I can't do those.
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to be part of any of those studies.
That's fun.
Why exactly?
I have an incurable brain disease.
Oh, right.
Fouls up the data.
Yep. Another reason why you should consult your doctor. Because I do know people who have been at raves, and they were prone for schizophrenia, and they've been puddled, which is somebody just dumps a bunch of LSD into the palm of your hand, and then you trip balls for a long time. And if you are prone to have schizophrenia, sometimes it can spike that, and it can actually have the schizophrenia really sort of develop and show.
So just so you guys know, typical dosage of acid is somewhere between 20 micrograms and 1,500 micrograms. All right.
What would that look like?
So that's why you
1 or 2 drops from an eyedropper.
Oh no, it's less than that.
Okay, well
that's
maybe I go a little hard. Maybe I go a little harder than most people.
Well, I mean, if it's diluted, then sure. But like, keep in mind for the moment, right? A gram is tiny. A milligram is 1,000th of a gram. A microgram is 1,000th of a milligram.
Yeah.
20 of those. Very, very tiny amount. Now, you asked if LSD can form dependencies and all that, and it's kind of funny because it can't, and you also can't overdose with it. So consider pouring a puddle of it into your hand, and then, like, drinking that shit. That's a lot of acid.
I'm
You'll be high for like
correct.
a week, but...
Correct me on this. Didn't the guy who discovered LSD, like, accidentally dose himself with an obscene amount or something?
Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was an obscene amount. The guy that sort of discovered it and made it famous, during his experiment, some splashed out onto his skin, and then when he was on his bike ride home, he started tripping balls.
Oh, it's like tie.
Yeah. Well, no.
Oh yeah, we are talking. We're missing out so many puns, Jables.
Huh?
LSD. We're missing out so many puns. We named this channel this for a reason.
Goddamn.
Oh god, we suck.
Yeah. Sorry, I was having a serious discussion. I wasn't ready for puns.
Man, I am too tired for puns. I've been doing things for too long today. Don't worry, we'll get there.
Yeah. All right.
Well, and besides, Y2K, I don't want to make. Excuse me. Y2K, I don't want to tell people that if they subscribe to this channel and then unsubscribe, they're going to have withdrawals. That's going to make them not want to subscribe in the first place. I want to tell them that it's completely harmless. There's absolutely no problem. It's not addictive. It's just going to be the best thing for treating pain ever. You should prescribe opiates to all your patients, much like pharmaceutical industries did to doctors. And long story short, that's why Mexican black tar heroin's a thing.
Yeah, much like
there's a story there.
There's
a long story.
But much like how we don't get into gun laws, I don't want to talk about the laws surrounding the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, I'm not talking about laws. That's just history. Actually, if anyone's interested, there is a really good book about basically the history of the opiate epidemic in this country, like the opiate addiction epidemic, because it got bad, and there's some very specific things that happened. Book's called Dreamland. I'll find a link for it and put it in the description. Good read if you're into nonfiction. Worth checking out. But yeah. Anyway. So, I went over the addiction thing and the physical dependency thing as far as definitions go.
Gotcha.
A lot of we mentioned it with the canes and stuff like that, but like the opioids are not all synthesized from the poppy plant. A lot of them are, but they're not. They don't have to be, because generally speaking, when you say like an opioid or something like that, we're talking about the chemical and a family of chemicals that are related both because of their structure and how they act on the body. It's part of the reason why ecstasy and meth are both amphetamines, even though they clearly are like produce really different results.
Oh, I do have to say a little disclaimer: if you guys are going out and getting MDMA, or Molly, as it's more commonly known. If it's brown or pinkish, stay away, because that's probably mostly sassafras, which you can actually find in root beers.
And sassafras can actually be toxic. Very toxic.
Yes, sassafras can be toxic. It does have similar effects to MDMA, which is why those root beers are so goddamn good. And that's why Southern Gumbo is good, because there's sassafras in there too.
On the note of sassafras, because I do know a thing about that, like the reason why root beer is because you make it with the roots. The leaves are the part that have the toxic shit.
But you want to stay away from sassafras because you're not getting the full experience for one thing. You also want to be careful because a lot of times MDMA is cut with meth. I was fortunate enough that when I was getting it illegally, it was cut with cocaine instead, which was very nice. But just a little disclaimer out there.
To make that a more general thing, not that I condone the use of illicit substances and disclaimer, blah. But
no,
if you're going to be safe about it, a lot of drugs are cut with a lot of other stuff to make things cheaper. So they're cheaper for whoever's selling it to you, because if they gave you they could give you an ounce of cocaine, or they could give you an ounce of cocaine or half an ounce of cocaine and half an ounce of baking soda, and just tell you that it's an ounce of cocaine, sell it to you for the same price, and then laugh all the way to the bank. Except they probably won't do that because drugs.
Yeah.
Point is, there's a lot of that going around. Now, that's not to say that you can't find someone trustworthy. I'm sure you can. I'm not going to tell you where or how, because I definitely don't know. But I will say my DMs are always open. As Jables was saying, there are some telltale signs with, specifically, he was talking about MDMA there, where it's like, oh, if it looks like this, it's probably not the right stuff. Look at those. Maybe talk to somebody who knows a little more. Google's a resource. They can't really throw you in prison for looking this stuff up. Not here, at least. Not in the U.S. But still, or not yet, at least. But point is, be safe. Be careful. It's not really going to. There's no downside to you being careful about it.
Oh, another pro tip. If you can go to pretty much any store and you can buy water testers for like a pool and stuff like that. And once you learn what you're looking for, which you can find that out online pretty easily, you can get those testers and you can test the drugs yourself at home. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
That would not have occurred to me, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing to jump into as far as drugs go. So we just kind of went over those classes of drugs are usually talked about. So opioids are talked about because they work on opioid receptors. And because of their chemical structure and all that stuff. So you could find potentially an opioid that is not at all related to a poppy plant, and it would still probably be an opioid because it works exactly the same way. I think Suboxone is actually one of those that it was completely synthetic, but it's still an opioid. Does some really neat stuff though. Suboxone.
Is it fentanyl one of those?
I think fentanyl is as well.
Fentanyl's a dangerous one. When I was in the hospital, they had that going directly into my spine. I had tubes put in my chest and shit.
So Suboxone's actually really cool, by the way. I think it's amazing stuff. So I'm just gonna give a brief summary of it. It is an opioid, but it's a prescription thing that is used to treat opioid addiction because it kind of works. It works as a minor painkiller. I don't know how well. I've never had to be on it, but the cool thing about it is that when you put it or when you use it, it attaches to those opioid receptors. Triggers a little bit of a thing, but then it sticks in them. It stays there. So if you were to then later, take some OxyContin, it wouldn't work. And then, or at least not well. And then on top of that, you don't withdraw. So it's a way
to similar things. I don't know enough about it. I just have very limited knowledge on that.
So I think something like Suboxone is really neat because it's basically a way that you can take somebody who's like, I have an opioid habit and I want to get off of it, and then you can tell somebody, okay, we're going to put you on this, and so it makes it really hard to fall off that wagon because it sticks around for a month. It's It's really cool. So you get this injection like once a month. And again, if I'm getting this wrong, I'm sorry, but it's close enough to the truth. So you get this injection once a month, and then you can't go and take other opiates, but you're also not withdrawing, so you can build those habits of functioning without it. And then slowly get weaned off of the Suboxone, and then by the end of it, you're not withdrawing. So we're getting a lot better at treating a lot of different kinds of addiction. Addiction medicine it's not a new field, but we're making a lot of advances like now really quickly because we're really starting to treat it more as a public health issue than as a criminal issue. I mean, we're still treating it as a criminal issue, but there's mental health, like various mental health, hospitals and practitioners in this country are turning around and saying, okay, we need to treat this as a medical thing now. So even if law enforcement isn't catching up, but still.
I do want to address the chat real quick. Where was it? YTKW. You might not be allergic to weed. It might just be shit weed. Sometimes shit weed that hasn't been properly cured or dried or anything like that can end up giving you a migraine and make you want to throw up. But you might be allergic, so maybe just avoid it in general. And also, who else? Mitochondria. The kid at your middle school who got busted for selling oregano and telling people that it's weed. My brother used to do that, only it was, he would sell catnip.
Ooh,
yeah.
I know a guy who did that with horse shit one time. That was pretty funny. Literal horse shit.
That's pretty good.
Selling literal horse shit.
Yeah. It was really
I knew a kid that bought broccoli one time.
God.
Yeah.
Actually,
Don't smoke broccoli.
Yeah, so speaking of potency with drugs, because people are talking about like whether or not fentanyl is like 100 times stronger than morphine and all that. Potency is kind of a funny thing. You might take 200 milligrams of caffeine, which is like 2 or 3 cups of coffee. You know, it depends on how strong you brew it. But you might take that, and that might make you feel awake. 10 milligrams of Ritalin might do the same thing. So potency of a drug is so like LSD is very, very potent as a drug, right? Because you need a very small amount of it for it to be active. But that's kind of a really it's oftentimes not really an apples to apples comparison because it's like, oh yeah, this thing is more potent because you need less of it, but you're still going to take like a pill, and that pill isn't necessarily going to be that much stronger. It might just have way less of the drug in it. So like a 200 milligram pill and a 5 milligram pill can be almost exactly the same size. It just depends on the filler. You know,
Gotcha.
So with potency of drugs, that's just a funky thing. It's hard to compare things unless you're comparing dosages of very similar drugs or the same drug.
And once again, also everybody's body's different, so your body could react differently to different things.
Absolutely.
So.
As far as addiction goes, it doesn't necessarily, because of the physical process to it, you don't necessarily need to have a long-standing habit of doing it, or even much of one. You can get addicted to nicotine with one cigarette. The cravings aren't all that bad, you know. Like it's not like you know, a month down the line are suddenly, 2 packs a day. But you can still trip that mechanism in your head where you get nicotine cravings. And those get worse. You can get more addicted to something or less addicted. There are degrees of it. But that physical process can start and get kind of stuck with one, because nicotine is tremendously addictive. But that doesn't mean it's going to ruin your life. So that's part of the reason why talking about it as a physical process does matter.
Nicotine is an interesting one because it technically is a stimulant.
Yeah, and that was my dad earlier.
Yeah.
Whereas the inherent physical properties of a drug to addict you versus the individual user's propensity to be addicted and how he deals with it. So it's a lot more of a subjective overall.
And
we're usually led to believe.
Yeah, a lot of what you're dealing with addiction too is, or can be at least, is dopamine regulation stuff. Because dopamine is basically the chemical in your head that rewards you for stuff. So when you're playing a video game, You know, you're getting these massive hits of dopamine every time you win, or just from playing it. It's part of the
what your
reason.
brain releases whenever it wants to do positive reinforcement, basically.
Exactly. It's the reward chemical. It's like you do more of that.
That's why.
You know, you get.
That's why social media.
Yeah.
There's an issue with social media addiction because likes and shares get that little dopamine hit. It's a dopamine hit of acceptance. In that case.
I see a thing. I see a thing that I want to address in a second in the chat there. But yeah, so in that case, or like as far as addiction goes, some people, naturally speaking, like you mentioned before, that someone was predisposed to schizophrenia. You might be predisposed to dopamine regulation issues, which is why when you see someone who says like, I have an addictive personality, I get addicted to video games or to porn or to watching movies, that person probably is going to have issues with substances as well, because the circuitry in their brain that's kind of built to handle, you know, reward mechanisms is not the best. And kind of don't really want to trust that to regulate everything. But at the same time, maybe they won't. Maybe that person is not genetically predisposed to be an alcoholic, but they might still develop a drinking problem. So like all this stuff gets all over the place. It's a big mess, and it's actually, I find it really interesting to delve into because there's a bunch of cool shit.
Yeah. There's a lot of mental health things that we can talk about. We can talk about the reason why I don't do psychedelics with first-timers anymore.
We could. We could.
Yeah. I mean, we got time. As far as I know, the things aren't even going on tonight. So.
What about that time when you found out that weed actually is a gateway drug? Wait, before you do, I just want to mention a thing here to Siredi Kausi. I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. But as far as like the Ritalin bit, Ritalin affects ADHD brains and regular brains a bit differently. Kind of the same way caffeine affects them differently, and let's not talk about meth. But part of what's going on there, and before I wrap that up, I'm just going to say there's a YouTube channel called How to ADHD that has a lot of really interesting stuff about kind of the nuts and bolts of it, in addition to some useful strategies that I've found really useful for my ADHD. But on the other side of it, part of what's going on, again, my understanding of it, not going to proclaim to be an expert here, but my understanding is part of what's going on is that because your attention is all over the place and it's all floaty, you're not so much fixing the problem as putting your brain into a state where it can focus. And it just so happens that that state is basically forcing you into fight or flight. So... And that's part of what stimulants will do for somebody. You know, it gets your heart rate up. It gets, I think it's your sympathetic nervous system going as opposed to your parasympathetic nervous system, which are not terms I want to define right now. But again, you start, you know, your appetite goes down. Sex drive does weird stuff. In general, you're basically kicking into fight or flight instead of feed or breed. And that can be really, really interesting for somebody who's not ADHD, or they might get different effects from it. But if you are ADHD, it makes you hyper-focused, not by calming you down, but by forcing you to have a one-track mind and amping you up. Your heart rate still goes up, but you can
basically
only focus on one thing.
You're going at the same speed, you just take out all the background noise.
Oh no, you're going faster. Like, because it's still a stimulant, it's just that stimulants interact with ADHD brains a little bit differently than normal, or at least those specific stimulants. So, caffeine, Ritalin, Adderall, potentially meth. It just has to do with a lot of the weird kind of chemical and structural stuff going on in the brain there. But so the not understanding the draw, I totally get you on that one because I have a similar reaction with Ritalin. But it just does not work that way for other people. For other people, it's this massive boost of energy. They're just awake and alive, and they feel amazing, and like they can do everything, and it doesn't lock them into one thing.
Yeah, I do Adderall when I have a bunch of stuff to do that day.
So
heart idling at over 150. I've been there.
I don't do Adderall. Oh, that's not.
Just to interrupt again. So basically, much like the dependency issue is very subjective, so is the high that you get.
The high that you get is, depending on the drug, is very subjective. So some of them are pretty unilateral. Pretty much everyone reacts to them roughly the same way, but with a lot of it, it's like, again, your brain is a really complicated chemical machine. And you're putting a chemical into that, so it all depends on what's going on inside of there. You know? So that's why you can have good trips and bad trips. That's why caffeine wakes some people up, makes other people sleepy. You know, it's why some people get, you know, are violent drunks and other people aren't. It's
I get really energetic on pain medications.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. Yeah.
Yeah, so every reaction's going to be a bit different. I wouldn't call it subjective, though, because you can give somebody a drug and then have them hooked up to, like, an EEG and an EKG and all kinds of electrodes and everything, and you can measure exactly what's going on with them physiologically. Now, their subjective experience might be different, like how they feel might be different, but what's going on physically is pretty objective. It's just, it can be hard to predict. This is part of why depression's really hard to treat, because you go into a doctor and you're like, I'm depressed. They're like, okay, well, let's try this medication and see if it works. And then if it doesn't, we have to try a different one. You know? And, you know, repeat however many times until you get it right, because you don't know what's going to work on each individual person. There's no blood test to see what thing is going to work.
Yeah. That's why a lot of doctors, they'll prescribe you a drug and just say, try that out for a little while and see how it works, and we'll talk again in a week or two.
Yeah. Speaking of which, guys, if you're going and seeing a psychiatrist or a regular doctor for something, you're taking a drug and it's not working, tell them!
Yes. Don't just stop taking that drug.
Also,
because it might be working. It might actually be working in ways that you're not recognizing.
And really, really important one, especially with antidepressants. Generally speaking, with antidepressants, after certain times, you're supposed to start upping the dosage because you do start building up a tolerance because your body starts getting used to it. If your antidepressants are not working after like months of using them, tell your damn doctor.
If you are somebody that uses drugs, be honest with your fucking doctor. Generally, they don't care what other drugs you might be using on the side. They might encourage you to get off them, depending on what it is. And they might give you something, but they might accidentally give you something that can be extremely harmful if you're taking other things.
It's kind of like when you're
honest with doctors.
Yeah, it's the same deal. I mean, not to get into a political debate here, but some people have been... I know people have seen that thing where it's like, there's no, you know, like I didn't, or I marked the other box for you know, sex on my sheet because I identify as a tridenter pyrofox from the forest planet. It's like, no. They're doing that to see if you have risk for prostate cancer or any general thing that's going to be have higher risks associated with sex. And same deal. What? If your doctor asks you if you drink and smoke, tell him.
Yes. And to be honest, whether or not you identify as a female, you're still open to prostate and testicular cancer. So let your fucking doctors know.
No, it's that same deal.
Just be honest with your doctors overall. That's my big take. I fucking hate doctors in general. That's why I've been going to the same one my whole fucking life. But
it's the same deal. It would be the same thing as like, and I love doing car analogies apparently, but it would be the same thing as bringing, you know, your car to a mechanic and being like, yeah, so it needs fixing. And they're like, okay, well, when was the last time you got an oil change? And not telling them that was years ago because you're embarrassed. Tell them that. It will help them know where to look for the problem.
Yeah, it could be embarrassing, but, you know, it can help them find what the problem actually is.
So, but, yeah, sorry, we're getting to medical practice here. We want to just talk about drugs.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's a very important thing, though, when it comes to drugs, is you have to be honest with your doctors, and you feel free to ask your doctors, because there is doctor-patient confidentiality.
Yeah, and that's pretty ironclad. There are a few cases, if you tell your doctor, like, if you're going to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a doctor, you tell them that you're going to kill somebody, they are legally obligated to, you know, talk to the cops. But short of, like, you know, doing something like that, it's pretty damn ironclad. Like, doctor-patient confidentiality it's a serious thing, and they will honor it. It's one of the big things they have to do. And also keep in mind,
if they don't, you can sue the shit out of them if they don't.
Yeah, and keep in mind, because of the Hippocratic Oath, like, even if they might want to tell you, like, oh yeah, for sure, have fun, do whatever you want on your weekend. If you tell them, you know, that you're using whatever substances, whatever things, like if you tell them that you drop acid every weekend, because of the whole do no harm thing, they can't necessarily tell you to do it and that it's fine. They might have to tell you probably shouldn't do that. So it's, in a lot of cases, they're not allowed to endorse behavior. But
yeah, in my experience, it's always, you know, you really shouldn't do that. But
exactly,
it's always followed up with a but.
It's one of those, like, I'm legally obligated to tell you that this is a terrible idea, but if you want to get away with it, it's that kind of thing. So keep in mind that just because a doctor is telling you, hey, don't do this thing, that might be them fulfilling a certain obligation. That doesn't mean that they won't tell you how to do it safely. You know, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Should I tell everybody how weed actually is a gateway drug, at least if it's illegal?
Oh my god, please tell me this. Please tell this story. It's so funny.
Yeah. So it was New Year's Eve quite a few years ago. I was with some friends. And all of my weed dealers were out at the time, and I had a buddy who found a weed dealer, and so we gave him $60. Well, we gave him $80 to go and get some weed, and so he went off and hopped into his dealer's car, and then instead of getting weed, he came back with these 4 little pills. What the fuck? You were supposed to get us weed, dude. Oh yeah, but he said, like, this is something called, like, 2CE. And apparently you're supposed to trip for like 12 to 18 hours on this. So I figured it was a better deal than weed. But dude, you were supposed to get us weed. Keep in mind, this guy's fucking stupid. He knows he knows 2 things: how to get laid and how to do martial arts. That's fucking it.
Oh, I know a few guys like that.
Yeah. That is all this guy knows. It's like, and I looked at him that night, and I was like, this is why they call weed a gateway drug, dude. And he's like, oh yeah, maybe it is. So we ended up doing the 2CE. That was a lot of fun. If anybody that doesn't know, 2CE is like synthetic mescaline, essentially. It has the body high of ecstasy and the visual effects of acid. So it's a hell of a trip. And what we didn't know is we were actually getting double doses. So that's why it lasted 12 to 18 hours. He put double doses into single pills. So how are we supposed to know? He didn't tell us. And so that's why it lasted about 12 to 18 hours.
So remember, everybody, weed's a gateway drug when you get your dumbass friend to go buy it. By the way, dumbass friend, if you're listening, I don't think I know your name, but even if I do, I don't want to insult
you know his name. We talked about him yesterday.
Well, you know martial arts. I don't want you to beat the shit out of me. I love you. I'm lovingly calling you a dumbass, even though we've never met.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Everybody calls him a dumbass. He's aware of it, too. He's aware that he's a dumbass. So, at least he's got that. At least he's self-aware about it. Yeah, so TCE, that is a hell of a drug.
Actually, on that, since you were mentioning it, I mean, how many genuine new drugs show up for consumption? Or is it always... I had a feeling it was mostly like the same thing, just sort of with small variants and repackaged or something.
Okay, so I call it a drug, but a lot of things there's stuff that can be used for eyeglass cleaner, but it also gets you really high. So I mean, like it's chemicals that affect your brain in a strange way, I think is a better way of putting it than just labeling it under drugs, because it wasn't sold as a drug, and it was technically still legal in the U.S. at that time. People were just ordering it through China.
To give you a brief idea of how varied some of this can be, even just medically speaking, acne cream usually has salicylic acid in it. Same stuff you use that's in like a lot of wart removers and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Salicylic acid is the active ingredient in aspirin.
Is it?
Yeah, salicylic acid is aspirin. It's also acne creams. It's so applied topically and internally, it does completely different things. And then on top of that, it's also useful for certain industrial applications. So it's like that one chemical does a few kind of varied things, just medically speaking. And then, you know, add to that you've got like, oh my god, it gets a little crazy with some of this stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, with an
But you
eye,
got-
like,
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
you can even look at cocaine.
yeah. But like an eyeglass cleaner in general, it's like so an eyeglass cleaner. If you'd want something to do that, you want it to be a solvent. You want it to, or maybe a detergent. Either way, basically what you want it to do is you want it to get rid of oils on the glasses without, you know, melting the plastic or glass the glasses are made out of. So you probably don't want it to be like acetone or something. You don't want it to damage any coatings, and you want it to move dust off. And then you want it to dry. So this is why you might like use alcohol to clean electric parts instead of water, because it evaporates really quickly and doesn't leave a residue.
I only use eyeglass cleaner as an example because there was this guy selling it at a rave I went to.
No, I know, but I'm saying like, okay,
he had it clearly labeled as eyeglass cleaner. It was in powder form.
No, I know.
But
I
the idea was
saying.
you dilute it with water and then clean your glasses.
Right. So all I'm saying though, before you go with that, all I'm saying is that like there's these chemical properties that you would want from an eyeglass cleaner, right? So easily dissolvable in certain things. Because if it's easily dissolves like, so easily dissolvable also means it dissolves other things in certain ways. You know, dries quickly. Maybe it's an aromatic, so it like vaporizes and does certain, you know, has certain carbon structures in it. And it just so happens that a lot of chemicals that have those same properties work on your brain in certain ways. Like, here's a funny one. There's a whole class of hydrocarbons called esters, or whatever. I always hate pronouncing that word because it's spelled differently than how I think it should be. But esters are kind of interesting because they're aromatics. They have very nice smells. They do all kinds of stuff. A lot of flowers have esters in them. A lot of perfumes. A lot of explosives.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things that are actually legal that you can get high on. I'm not gonna. Yeah. I can talk about the guy that got fired from. When I worked at Walmart, there was a guy that got fired because he was huffing air duster.
That's a different
on the job.
thing,
yeah, but okay. This was a guy that grew up Mormon. Like, didn't know anything about drugs. Didn't know about things that could potentially get you high and stuff. And he was cleaning the keyboards, and he noticed that if he was inhaling some of the air, he'd start feeling really good. And so it went on. He was walking around the aisles, pretty much just huffing the canned air, because it's not just air. There's a bunch of other gases in there. And he started offering it to customers out on the floor. Have you guys ever noticed, like, this stuff makes you feel really good? All right. And he started offering it to customers. You want to try some? And because he was high off of his fucking gourd. Yeah, he got fired pretty quick.
So, one thing I do want to say about that, with the canned air stuff, I don't know what brand he was using. I don't know exactly which canned air he was using, so I'm not going to say what he was doing, but generally speaking, those aren't like huffing paint or sniffing markers or anything, which are both really bad for you, by the way. The canned air stuff is bad for you in a very different way. Usually what goes on is it's really cold when it comes out, and you like breathe it in. It's like, oh wow, I feel high. What's going on is it's freezing some of your lung tissue and making it harder for you to absorb oxygen. It's the same thing that happens with autoerotic asphyxiation. You're seriously damaging your lungs. Don't do it.
Thank you. Now I know.
Yeah. Do not huff canned air. Yeah, don't do the canned air stuff. It's really bad for you.
Yeah. I also had a situation when I was working at Walmart. I had a bunch of kids come up and ask me where the whippets were. I was just like, do you mean whipped cream canister refillers? Do you mean gas refillers for your whipped cream can? They're like, no, whippets. I'm trying to be helpful here, guys. Do you mean this? Because I technically could not tell them unless I used the right phrasing. It's like when you go into a head shop and you ask for a bong. Can't do that. Don't do that, people. It's a water pipe.
Yeah. You ask for a hookah, though, because those are definitely always for tobacco, right?
Absolutely. They're really shit for... Hookahs are really shit for weed, anyways. Because it's constantly burning with that coal, so it's like...
They're not shit for opium.
You end up wasting a lot. You end up wasting a lot, and it takes so much weed to fill it up in the first place. Plus, you have to have 4 people. So, shisha is great through a hookah, by the way. I will not deny that. That is one of my favorite things to do sometimes. Just hanging out with a few friends, have the hookah going.
I think that was one of the more interesting ways I've been invited into somebody's room. Is just, hey, you want to see my hookah? And I was like, is this a joke? She was really cute. But it was like, do you mean that? Or what are we talking about here? I'm so confused. But no, it was like, she was just like, no, I just want to show you my hookah. I just got a hookah. It's awesome. I'm like,
yeah, and you get some really good flavors. I got into hookahs for a couple of years. They're really enjoyable to sit down and smoke. It's very low nicotine content, if any at all. It's mostly just it's tobacco's soaked in like this flavored molasses, and so when you're just smoking some shisha off the hookah, it's actually it's a lot of fun. You get really thick smoke clouds and stuff. How I got really good at blowing smoke rings. Yeah, your first experience with weed was through a hookah? No, I'm sorry, Evelyn. That's not the best way to have your first weed experience. I recommend a pipe or a bong. Bongs are kind of difficult depending on the size. That reminds me, I need to clean mine. But depending on the size, hookahs are not the way to go. I recommend a pipe or even a joint. Because then you can take in as much as you want. You actually recognize how much is going in. With a hookah, it cools down a bit too much. So you... I can talk about my buddy that got carbon monoxide poisoning from hitting too big of a bong.
I mean, you could.
Yeah, yeah, so...
I mean, what more is there to story by that, than that?
Well, I don't know. This buddy of mine almost had to be hospitalized because he tried to hit a 6-foot-tall bong. Ended up getting carbon monoxide poisoning, just puking all fucking night. And he almost had to be hospitalized because he could hardly breathe. Yeah, so weed can be harmful. Weed itself is not harmful. It's the carbon monoxide that you got to worry about.
Gotcha.
Let's not get into that too much. But yeah, some people can have some really odd adverse reactions. Some people are actually allergic to it. And then on top of that, you know how we were saying that it the high really depends on you sometimes and the drug, and in the case of weed, like what strain of it is. Some people get really paranoid with weed and just can't deal with it at all. So it's like if someone, actually speaking of it, just someone tells you, hey, it's fine, there's nothing wrong that can happen, and then you try it and you have a really bad experience. It might be just that you had a really bad experience, but it also might be that that's just not the drug for you.
Yes.
So you might try. So you might try weed once. You get really paranoid, but it might just be that one time.
It might be you. It might be the weed. It might be a lot of things. And I'm not going to say necessarily go and keep going out and trying stuff. There's a lot of variation in weed specifically, but just. It's kind of like if someone shows you an anime and it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and you don't watch much anime, your name's Jeff, and you don't really like you don't really like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Instead of listening to people when they tell you
some things are not for introduction.
Well, no, it's not even for introduction. It's like instead of people telling you, oh hey, you should just you should watch 2 more episodes, it gets really good. Maybe it's not the show for you. Maybe check out Samurai Champloo, because Jeff liked Samurai Champloo, and I'm glad he did, because it's a good show.
Speaking of people named Jeff, If you're watching right now, you should message me back on Twitter. You fucking fuck. Also, one thing I do want another little disclaimer. If you are going to do any drugs, I'm not condoning any drug use of any sort. Blah, 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 blah. But if you are, start small. Don't think that you have to, quote unquote, keep up with whoever you may or may not be doing these things with. But start with a small dosage and wait a good 20 to 30 minutes before you go any farther. Because sometimes some drugs take a little bit of time to kick in. And
yeah. First time I smoked weed, that kind of happened to me.
That definitely happened to me.
See, I don't remember.
That even applies to alcohol.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was the first or second time because my memory is a little hazy for obvious reasons. But one of the very early times, I blame my brother. He was like, "Oh, you want to smoke weed with us?" And I was like, "Okay." He was like, "So here's a bong." And I didn't realize that I should have waited and seen when it kicked in. So I was 4 or 5, like, really solid bong hits in. And then I was just gone. I was like 12. Just, oh my God. I was not ready for that. I was like, it was like, oh God, stop the world. I don't want to fall off. But yeah, I should have waited. I blame him for not, guiding me. Damn you, older brother, who's not that much older than me. But.
Yeah, and don't ask me to be your shaman. I will not be your shaman and guide you through any experience, especially if it deals with psychedelics.
I can only be a shaman with a few things, and I'd rather not say what they are.
I have much experience with drugs, but I'm not comfortable anymore. Being somebody to introduce other people to certain psychedelics, because I went through an issue where I had a friend of mine for about 8 to 12 hours pretty much curled up in the fetal position in a corner, repeating his name to himself over and over again because he was afraid he was going to forget who he was, and he thought that he was in hell. And he was never the same afterwards. So,
not a fun time.
Yes, there are dangers to psychedelics. If you are not in a good mental headspace, a lot of the time, do not have that be your first time.
Brad, I can also picture Jables being a Shiva weed Sherpa. I can definitely see that.
Where the fuck are you seeing that?
In the chat.
Special brand of weed and scenery. Yeah, okay. Sure.
I had it on Top Chat instead of live chat. I don't know what the hell the difference is, but...
there is no difference. It's just more for larger streams when people are spamming and stuff.
Oh, got it.
With our stream, there is no difference.
Why you gotta, just throw those daggers right into my ego? Why you gotta kick my ego in the dick, Jables?
Well, it's only episode 7. We haven't even been going on 2 months.
7 is supposed to be a lucky number. Why you gotta kick my ego right in the... Why you gotta kick my ego, dick?
Because I can.
Because they can.
Because my ego dick is huge and it's an easy target. There you go.
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Low-hanging fruit, man.
It reaches all the way here from where you're at. So.
Oh, man. So I don't know where to go with this. I have lots of stuff I could talk about with drugs, but I don't want to just, go on a huge diatribe about the way I see this stuff without Bar being able to ask questions and Jables being able to put in his own stuff. So hopefully you guys can take it away a little bit.
Yeah, well, we could do that. We could do all sorts of things. Bart, are there any drugs you're specifically curious about?
Weed, mostly.
Weed, mostly? Okay. No, a shit ton about weed. What are you curious about it with?
Basically... how much do you retain of your cognitive thought while you're on it? Because to me, part of enjoying something is like how much you're able to recollect afterwards, how much you can feel aware of the experience of pleasure.
That all depends on how much you smoke. You might not remember it. It can be extremely enjoyable. Sometimes you might just get stuck into the couch and stare at a turned off TV thinking you're watching a movie for a while.
Yeah, short answer, it really depends on a lot of stuff. Namely,
Yeah, it seems to.
a lot of it's how much you smoke, and like how you're smoking it, and what.
And then there's also different strains. If you ingest it like through edibles, though, that gets processed through your liver in a much different way, and it actually makes it a lot more psychoactive.
Gotcha. Whole other ball game then.
It's really different when you do it through edibles. That being said, I have had memory issues when smoking weed. I don't think I've ever had memory issues with edibles.
That's a pretty good point. I used to make pots of when I was selling. I used to make pots of ravioli or spaghetti and just sprinkle a bunch of weed in there in the slow cooker and just let that stew for a whole day. And then I'd have my friends over for a little feast and game night. And
oh boy.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. One bowl would like a physical bowl munching on some ravioli for dinner would get you pretty damn high.
One of the things I've noticed personally, and this is just me and my reaction to certain things, I notice it more with edibles as long as I'm careful about it. But even with smoking, as long as I stop right when I've hit my threshold for it, because I'm kind of a lightweight. I actually get better at math, but I have a very, very narrow margin where that works. So it's like above a certain point, it works, and then if I go any higher than that, it's gone again. I'm just out of it. But
I get better at organization and research for some reason.
Yeah, it's for me. It calms enough things down that I'm less likely to get distracted by my own mind. So it's easier for me to follow one line of logic all the way through, without getting, if I were taking a test or something, it doesn't. I don't get test anxiety, which helps a lot. But with and Brad just asked, at least I think he did in the chat, don't edibles fuck with you harder than regular weed? They can. They definitely can. This is one of those.
They're a lot more.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're a lot more psychoactive than just smoking.
Yeah. And this is one of those issues of potency where it's really hard to talk about. Compare them because they're absorbed differently.
Yeah, if you want to deal with that, what you want to do, I live in a state that's legal, so I can go in and they can tell you how much THC is in each thing.
Right, but again, this is one of those cases where also, a contact, how much it takes to get a contact high and how much of something that does both, let's say. How much it takes to get a contact high, how much it takes to, get high after drinking it or smoking it or injecting it is all going to vary and be different. This is one of those cases where smoking it and eating it are just different processes. So, they work a little differently. So it's hard to compare.
Yeah. Oh, apparently they are going to be streaming tonight.
Yeah, I sure hope they tell us when.
Scheduled for 7:45 p.m. So 7:50.
What? So wait, do we have We'll just keep going until their intro music puts on, then we'll hop out or something.
Yeah. Or until we run out of shit to talk about.
Yeah. But yeah, weed is a really, really weird drug in so many ways.
I love it.
Oh my god. I say that because to an extent you can control how it affects you. There's a whole lot of different strains. It is somehow a stimulant, a depressant, a painkiller, and
that's
technically a hallucinogen all at the same time, because chemically speaking, it's fucking weird.
That also, especially when it comes to the painkillers, that's a lot more CBD. That's also a lot of the seizure reducing stuff.
Oh,
in the CBDs. A lot of the medical benefits come from CBDs, don't they?
No, sorry. I should be clear about this. Generally speaking, drugs fall into 4 or 5 classes, and it's stimulant, depressant, analgesic, so painkiller.
Yeah.
That also actually crosses over sometimes with narcotics, but sometimes not really. But you have basically stimulant, depressant, narcotic, analgesic, and hallucinogen.
Mm-hmm.
And usually these are kind of mutually exclusive. Usually, so like alcohol can kind of be a stimulant and a depressant at the same time, ish. But meth is a stimulant. That's all it is. That's all it does. It's a stimulant, right? What's it called? Opioids are, they're downers basically. Like when you OD on an opioid, it's your heart rate gets slower and slower, and you have a dangerous blood pressure drop. You know, that's why in the whole Pulp Fiction thing they used adrenaline and stabbed into her heart so her heart wouldn't stop.
Gotcha.
You know, and so usually a hallucinogen is none of the others. It can't be, except weed somehow manages to be in every category at the same time.
Wow.
Oh,
because it's chemically very, 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 very weird.
A little tip for everybody if you haven't tried weed or you don't know much about it. Indicas are the couch lock weeds. So if you want to just like chill on your couch and watch movies, generally you're gonna want an indica. Everybody's different. I know people that indicas do the opposite. But generally speaking, indicas are the one that get you on the couch. Sativas are the ones that you're gonna smoke throughout the day.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So the "it depends" caveat, which is going to exist with almost anything. Like if you were to ask me, "Gee, how does Ritalin affect you?" I could be like, "Well, let me tell you, son." Or really anything. How does caffeine affect you? There's always going to be an "it depends." That "it depends" is way bigger when it comes to weed.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much variation.
Well,
It's
weird. It depends on the grower. It depends on the process. Depends on each individual strain. Different indica strains can affect you differently, and different sativa strains can affect you differently.
Yeah, it depends on you. It depends on what you've had to eat that day. It depends on your mindset going in. It depends on whether or not you know how to meditate. It depends on, oh my god, so much bullshit. And it's like that's not a bad thing. It's part of why it's become this huge thing, is that chances are there's a strain for what you want. You know, whatever it is you want to get out of it, the chances are there's a strain for it. But
kind of like how people who don't like beer, you just haven't found the beer for you, I think.
It's kind of a similar thing, and
I'm once again, I'm not saying everybody should do drugs and blah 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 blah. If you live in a legal state, though, I recommend trying it out, but consult your doctor because there might be some other issues going on with you.
Yeah.
So, but there might be some issues that it can help you with.
So, if the Saints are going to get started fairly soon, we're probably going to want to wrap this up fairly quickly. So, there's a couple of things. One of them is a thing from me, but I can totally skip that. As for you, Jables, I know one of the things you said last night you wanted to do was talk about how to talk to cops. And
oh yeah.
And Bar, if you've got anything that you have a burning desire to know about, or honestly, like if you have a really vague question or just your thoughts, questions, whatever, go ahead and ask them, because now would be the time.
No, so far we've covered a lot, and you've pretty much touched on the main stuff I was meaning to know about.
Okay.
So no judgment on this, at least from my part. But as when we talked about guns, if you like drugs and are interested in them, learn more about them because it can't hurt. Yeah. If you do not like drugs and you want them to all be illegal and you want to do all that stuff, if you're going to delve into drug policy, you should probably know a bit about the drugs. Go learn more about the drugs. And if you just have an idle curiosity and what the hell your psychiatrist is making you take because you're depressed, or whatever else is going on, learn more about drugs in general. Like, not to do the G.I. Joe thing, but seriously, the more you know, like, it really can't hurt you in this way. Knowing is half the battle. The other half of the battle is violence. Sorry.
Okay, so as somebody who has sold lots of drugs and was also a skater kid and had a lot of dealings with the police officers and whatnot, and I'm not going to mention my parents' works and stuff like that. That also gave me a lot of insight. There are a few rules when talking to cops. One is be polite. If you are polite, that will carry you a long way.
Definitely.
Another rule is, if you act like nothing is wrong, then there is nothing wrong. I've been searched by the cops with some cocaine in my pocket, but I acted like it wasn't even there, and they were just looking for weapons. They didn't like dig in all my pockets, but they were just making sure I didn't have any weapons because I needed to talk to them about something else. I've had issues where I've had about 15 grams of hash in my backpack, and I've been stopped by the cops because supposedly it was illegal to longboard through downtown. Who knew?
So if they're pulling you over for a tail light, don't ask them if it smells like weed.
Yeah, don't ask them if it smells like weed. They'll lead you along the way. All you have to do is answer or don't answer questions. Yeah, Brett, I'm low-key a white supremacist. That's right. Yeah, these may not apply to you if you're black, by the way. That's
another very important point is I'll link I think it's Mike the Cop has one about this, but if you're talking to cops and you're being arrested and all that stuff, there's a reason why you have the right to remain silent, and you also are entitled to a lawyer. Don't forfeit that right. Point is, ask for a lawyer long before you say anything to the cops, because when they say anything you say can and will be held against you, they're not kidding about that. Anything. Yes. So there's no reason to not be polite. You can say, sorry, officer, but I don't want to answer that question without a lawyer or without my lawyer. You can be, perfectly pleasant and all that, and don't be a dick about it. Like there's plenty of stuff. Like if you're driving a car, well, let me put it this way: if you're driving a car and you get pulled over, and they ask for your license and registration, and you hand the license and the registration, the name on the registration doesn't match the license, and it's like, oh, well, that's my dad. It's registered in his name. It's his car. I'm just driving it. That's a question you can answer, because they're not gonna, it's not stolen, obviously. That might just make sense. But generally speaking, don't say anything.
Hold up. Do not scream, am I being detained? There's a time and a place for asking if you're being detained or you're free to go. And that's if they're holding you there longer than you think is necessary. Then you should ask then it's okay to ask the question, am I being detained?
And if those lights are on and flashing,
stop it. Don't spread false news over there, Y2KNW. I see you in the fucking chat. Don't do that. I'm trying to have a serious discussion about this.
Yeah, we'll link Mike the Cop and Donut Operator and stuff like that. But it's like, yes, the cops are allowed to detain you. Speeding is probable cause to detain you. They're allowed to do that.
There are questions you don't answer. One of the questions is, do you know why I pulled you over? Don't answer that question. Ask them why they pulled you over. Because if they will have a reason why they pulled you over, but they're seeing if you know, and part of that is to see if you were intentionally breaking the law. So
if your taillight is out and they pull you over for it, if you didn't know your taillight is out, it's like, oh, by the way, your taillight's out, you should get that fixed. If you did know about that, then that's on you, and all of a sudden you can get into trouble.
Yep. Unless if you were legitimately on the way to the store to actually get a new taillight.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll respect that. Generally. That's just my personal experience. My personal experience can't say for all. And sometimes cops are having bad days and they decide to be assholes. But
so your rules in summary would be, if you act like nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong, and
be polite and spout off a joke.
Yeah, if you can make them laugh, that helps.
Yeah. Those are the three big rules. I've been pulled over. I've been stopped with 15 grams of hash. A lot of jail time for that. And I just made a few jokes. I was working on a pot farm down in Northern California that got raided. All of us were just making jokes with the cops pretty much the entire time, and they let all of us workers go and just arrested the people that owned the farm. I've been in a lot of situations with police where drugs have been involved. There was a time I was hanging out with a couple friends. Chris, Steven, I know you're watching. Actually, I don't think you're watching. where we were smoking weed in the park, and a cop came up because he was bored, because it's a small town. And I was just joking around. My two, Chris and Steven, they wanted to be cops at the time. This was when we were in high school. And I wanted to be a baker because I wanted to transition into like owning my own edibles shop because I knew that legalization was on the way. And he said, "Oh, so you have the weed?" And I said, "No, dude, we already talked about this. I don't smoke weed. Like, it's fine." About a week later, run into the same cop because we're going to a high school dance. New friend is in the mix, my friend Sarah, and he starts smelling all of our drinks. We just have like Powerades and Arizona iced teas and stuff like that. And he starts shining a flashlight in all of our faces. He's like, "You got the weed this time?" It's like, "Dude, we've already talked about this." And then he shines it at my friend Sarah's face, and he's like, "So that means you have the weed." And she starts freaking the fuck out.
That's actually pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, I like that. Turns out both times I had the weed. But, you know, if you're nice and personable and polite and you make some jokes and you're acting like nothing is wrong, then they won't perceive you as doing anything wrong. It's when you start freaking out. Cops see that shit. They deal with people all the time. So when you start acting, you may not think, you have to really believe that nothing is wrong. And it was just weed, so I was definitely like, whatever. But you have to create the perception that nothing is wrong, or that you're doing nothing wrong to the police officers. They deal with people all the time, and they can see that shit. So...
Also, cops deal with so many assholes all the time, that not being one of those is sometimes a breath of fresh air. Like, yeah, just, it pays. Be polite, be pleasant. You know?
Yeah.
Don't make things worse for yourself. If you're gonna get arrested, you're gonna get arrested. You know, don't add stuff to it.
Just as an add-on, that's true anywhere you travel around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they're...
Do not make shit for yourself.
If they are telling you, if they are putting you in cuffs and they're like, "Now be completely honest with me," then they know something, so don't keep trying to cover it up. If you are completely honest, sometimes that can help you out a lot.
Alternatively, clam up and say, "I'm not answering the question." Like, don't lie, but, you know, "I'm not answering that question without a lawyer." That's reasonable. You know?
Yeah. It can go either way, but you have to learn how to judge those situations yourself. Like, I can't.
And hopefully you get no practice and never have to use it, you know, so good luck.
I have a lot of practice.
So we're just about at the end here, so I don't know, like, I think the one thing I've got to say here without going on a rant about it is, at least with how I see drugs, it's everything is like, or all medications you take are drugs, you know? Yeah. They're just prescribed, or they're just used differently. Everything has a dosage. Everything, you know, like the dose makes the poison, not the other way around. Everything interacts. There's all kinds of stuff there. So know about it.
And apples.
Yeah, know about it exactly the same way you would know about any other, you know, medication or drug you're taking. It's useful. It helps you, and for that matter, look at that with other stuff you put in your body, too, because those nutrition facts can be really useful if it turns out you need a certain thing in your diet, you know? Anywho, that's pretty much all I want to say about that. I didn't even get to talk about all the stuff I take, but, you know, that's fine. Yeah. We'll do a sequel episode sometime where I'll be more drunk because I'm not, you know, holding myself on call to see if Jeff needs me to run his damn stream! But and last thing, just want everybody to know that apparently, according to everything that we've done so far and some random people, that Jables is apparently a right-wing populist. So I'm
trying to start a fight with me at a bar.
What?
Yeah, so if you listen to this, just understand that you are listening to a right-wing populist, and then whatever the hell I am. And we're clearly going to convert you into some sort of, I don't know what, but hey,
Yeah,
soon you're going to see Jable sitting out there with a sandwich board or like, you know, a little, you know, table, and it says like, I don't know, something, I'm a populist, prove me wrong, drinking out of a mug that's from our fancy mug club that costs like $70 a year, and talking about stuff. Basically, I'm saying that Jables is going to turn into Steven Crowder. I'm going to help him.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, because Steven Crowder is so pro-drug like I am. Yeah.
So, with that, Mr. Mackey would say drugs are bad, okay? Jables would say maybe not. I'd say probably not. Or let's switch those around. Either way, know your doses, learn your shit, have fun, don't mouth off to the cops. Jables is a populist, and I don't know where else to go with that. Bar was here.
Yes.
Definitely here.
And with that, we have been your Lesser Saints of Discord, your one and only pre-show to the YouTube Saints. Fuck you, Fat Pat and Sophane, for even fucking trying. Alright, we air every Sunday at 5:30, except for tonight, and sometimes we go a little overtime, but whatever. Fuck it, at least we're here every Sunday for you guys. As always, if you have any problems within the Discord, feel free to DM me at moderator, feel free to @moderator, feel free to just talk to us in a voice chat. I'm generally hanging out in one of the voice chat channels.
I often am around, also moderator, DM me if you need to. And
if you have a problem with the moderator, DM another moderator.
I think we're good. But Bar, would you say something? Close out the show. You're on the spot. You have to do something witty now.
I'm here. I'm just a fan of the YouTube Saints, now a fan of the pre-show, and I may or may not be detained in the black side after everything discussed here.
All right, Bar's in a black site, Jables is a populist, and I'm going to start drinking. So, with that, everyone else is muted. You can't hear them anymore. They might be talking, but it's my show now. And because of that, we are going to play ourselves out like this. Bam, fitting song. Let's go.
You're pissing me off, man. Fuck. Shit. I bang on the door, but you won't let me. You're sick and tired of me reeking of gin. You locked all the doors from the front to the back and left me a note telling me I should pack. I walk in the bar and the fellas all cheer. They order me up a whiskey and beer. You ask me why I'm writing this poem. Well, a Scotsman clad in kilt left the bar one.
It's okay. That last song was intentional. The first 3 seconds of A Drunk Scotsman might be the intro for next time. Don't worry. I love you. You are being detained. Good night.